Welcome back, everyone, to the T.R.O.N podcast. This is your host, Rashad Woods, by way of Michigan and currently in the beautiful city of Las Vegas, Nevada. This is Kelly Travis, ladies and gentlemen, and she has some very interesting stories to tell of how she became who she is, and I think you'll like what you have to hear. Thank you for joining me, Kelly.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to a fellow Michigander.
Yeah, I appreciate you. You have a very interesting background because you're certified in something I didn't know what this was called. But when I looked it up, I realized it's more common than what I thought it was. And it's an Enneagram. You're certified in being an Enneagram. So first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I'm originally from Michigan. I have lived in several places, but somehow landed in Las Vegas accidentally.
Yes.
I have two little boys, a single mom, and I run my own business. I work with high achievers and I work in organizations around team dynamics. So, yeah.
What's the most fascinating thing that you learned about yourself as you became an entrepreneur? What were the steps it took to become, okay, this is what I want to do. How do I, because people have a tendency to hesitate to want to go out on their own. So what was your trigger point to do that?
I have a personality. The Enneagram is all about personalities and kind of our core motivators. I always had a side hustle. Like every job I've ever had, I had a side hustle.
Nice.
And it was because there was always this part of me that knew I wanted to work for myself. I don't do well working for people who tell me what to do, but they lack like direction and a vision and like decisiveness.
For sure.
When I was pregnant with my first son, it came to this realization because of my history. I have a background in mental health and have my own mental health struggles that we can touch on. I had taken a detour from that work and ended up in marketing and publishing. And I had risen really high in the organization, but I came to this realization when I got pregnant, like I'm not happy and I'm hustling and I'm like trying to prove myself and I'm doing it. But like at the end of the day, every milestone I reach, I'm like, this doesn't make me happy.
Right.
And so I decided at that point, if I'm going to be a mom, I want to show up better for my kid. So I need to be doing something that I love. And that's kind of how I detoured fully into entrepreneurship.
Fantastic. What's the official name of your company?
It's just my name.
Okay. That's well, yeah. Hey, I'm not saying this. I'm just curious because I was looking and I was like trying to find more. So my first question is, how did you start getting clients? Like, how did you know this is the field that I wanted to go into? Because it looks like in addition to be a certified Enneagram practitioner, you're a career and wellness coach. So when you're first trying to get clients, was it coworkers? Was it people who were quote unquote trying to do something different like yourself, or did you go to small business owners?
All of it. When I started, it was really like word of mouth, referral based. A lot of my business really comes from relationships, both individually and inside organizations. So that's how it started. Now I do a lot more speaking and can kind of reach people and connect with people through those ways and those outlets. So it's shifted a little bit.
Gotcha. So as far as being, I'm very sensitive. I think when it comes to mental health, and this is where I'm going to take a pause because I haven't had those experiences that people have had. But I think there's been a lot more sensitivity that has taken place in the last 10, 15 years than there was previously. Right. And I think that, there's more openness. You see athletes, you see various public figures openly speaking out, good or bad, but it's prevalent that people have it's part of everyday life. So how did you manage to overcome yours? You don't have to get too personal. You can if you want to. And just what did you experience that made you realize that was something you wanted to help with?
I didn't have a choice. I was a collegiate athlete, high level, and I had a horrible coach who took advantage of my drive and basically told me that if I wanted to get better, I needed to lose weight. And I, as a 19-year-old, trying to, become a professional athlete was like, but little did I know that I was kind of predisposed to these types of issues. I mean, you can categorize an eating disorder as an addiction. And so I took it too far and I lost the amount of weight he asked me to do. And then I just kept going. And my last race ended up being nationals. I was an All-American. Cross country. I ran track also. And I had to drop out of school. I was admitted to the hospital. I had severe thinning lining around the heart. My organs were starting to fail, all of it. So that was kind of like the wake up call, but I resisted for a long time, like a lot of people do, because I was holding on to this thing that made me feel in control.
Right.
And I remember the first time I sat down with a therapist. I had never been in therapy. My family was we were a family that you didn't talk about things. You just ignored them. They didn't
Which is
exist.
like 95%. Can we call a spade a spade? I mean, it's 95% of most families, right? Like, no, I don't want to interrupt your story, but like,
no, you're good.
Go figure it out. Like, go figure it out. Go play outside kind of a deal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. This thing is not happening. We're not talking about it.
Right.
Whatever. Toughen up, Kelly. You're good. Like that was I also think like generationally, that was also the thing, right? Like suck it up.
I mean, your parents and we're not too far from the same, generation. No. And it was basically like everybody watched Wonder Years. Like the dad was like for all intents and purposes, dude. Like if you're not bleeding or on your way to the hospital, with all
you're good.
Figure it out.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but as a parent, I have to catch myself with that now because I can hear my parents saying that, and I'm hearing the words come out of my mouth.
Well, and I'm I'll see like the little word box with all the little funny words that I'm not supposed to say. And I'll be like, is this really like I really gotta like be like the generation of the 2025 and be in touch with the feelings,
the
step-by-step process of your emotions instead of just be like, geez, just pick yourself up. It's deeper than that.
Yeah. I think a little bit of that is helpful, but like we definitely have grown. Anyway, my first experience with therapy, I didn't say a word the whole session. And slowly I started to talk, but I will say, despite that experience, I recovered physically. I gained all the weight I was supposed to. I was able to go back to college, but it took me until having my first son to really make that transition and to get healthy. And that contributes to a lot of my work now because what didn't work is now what I apply to my work today.
So here's the question. What are some of the misconceptions? And I don't want to beat this issue down with a dead horse on you because there's so much more to you than, what you occurred there. But what's the misconception about an eating disorder? Because, like just from the outside looking in, like what do people perceive about it that's like this should be an easy fix for somebody? Just quote unquote eat something and kind of get over it.
Well, I'll tell you, my dad is a great example. When he picked me up when I dropped out of college, he said, "Why are you doing this to yourself?" Like the perception is we have a choice, right? But like most addictions, there's this need to numb out, to not feel, right? To be in control. For eating disorders, it's a control thing, anorexia in particular. Sure. Obviously, alcoholism and different things like that. It's a different type of numbing out, right?
Right.
But it is this like thing that allows you to not have to deal with stuff. It's like the whole thing you focus on. It's really, really, it's a deep issue and it's hard to come out of and it runs your life.
I'm glad you came out of that. And I'm glad we're able to talk, on the positive side of what you come through. When we talk about your client base, right? And it's a variety of clients. It's, whether it's a career coach or whether it's the mental health avenue, like, how does a typical client, not want to say typical, but what's the stages and steps that you put them through to get to where they need to get?
It's a good question. So I operate on a continuum. Typically, we're either in like these 4 stages, operating on autopilot, unaware, completely unaware of what's happening with us, right? This is a lot of society, by the way.
You literally like, I don't want to interrupt, but
no.
The way you said that, it's like you could probably take a shower, make breakfast, and put on your clothes with your eyes closed.
Yeah.
Right? That's how most people can function right now because they're just like alarm bell hits and then they're just autopilot.
And like culturally right now, people are really struggling, right? So it's this, don't think about it, don't talk about it, just like get through the day, right? Which is not helpful for us. So then that's on one side. And then we kind of move into this rigid stage, which is more of, I'm aware stuff's not going well and I'm not feeling good, but I'm going to keep going because I don't know what to do. And then we move into the adaptive stage, which is more of, I'm aware, I want to fix this, right?
Sure.
I need to do the work and I'm ready. And then we get all the way to the other side, which is very transformative. That takes our entire life to get all the way over there. My work is really within that rigid and adaptive stage where people are becoming aware and ready to start to figure out what to do. And so that work looks different depending on the person. But because of my background and my education, it is this mix of we're incorporating mental and emotional health with like behavior. Right. I know you want to achieve. I know you want to perform. In order to do that, like what's going on? What's standing in your way?
I think you kind of guess what's my next is like, do you give them that Enneagram test to say before we can proceed, this is what I need this from you to fill this out, be as honest as possible?
Yeah, so I do an assessment through with the Enneagram, and that
Right.
provides me a whole bunch of information about the individual, and it also helps them start to become aware of the
Right.
behaviors and their blind spots and like some of the stuff that's holding them back and those patterns that keep us stuck.
For sure. And so the thing is about it, there are probably people have habits and patterns that they don't even know they have, right?
That's right.
And so I'm willing to bet that you read people pretty well now after
I
a while.
do.
Like it's kind of scary right now because like I'm almost like, what's that one movie with, my gosh, he's the actor where he took the pill and then he all of a sudden had like the enhanced senses.
Yes, I can't
Bradley
remember.
Cooper. Bradley Cooper,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So that's what I'm thinking you got right now. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, I do. I'm very, very good at being like, okay, I know what motivates that person. I can definitely
Right.
tell. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, Limitless, I think that was what it was called.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so that's what so like, so when people get these results, because this is so fascinating to me, people get these results and they're like, okay, this is where you are, personality type. I don't know how in depth is an Enneagram test.
It's really in depth. The actual assessment changes depending on your answer. So you and I would not get the same assessment because we would
Okay.
answer things differently, and then it's going to give you stuff to then go further. At its core, the Enneagram doesn't just tell you how you behave, but it tells you why you behave the way you do. And it's not about changing who you are.
Right.
It's about basically learning that there's more than one way to do things. There's more than one way to think. We aren't stuck in these patterns and behaviors. We can try on different glasses and look at the world with different perspectives. And that's where that real growth comes.
So you're doing well. You're getting your clients. Do you have is it? And then you start doing speeches. So what kind of speeches do you give? Is it your own business? Are you invited to places to speak at companies, or how does that work?
Yeah, a lot of it is doing speaking engagements at conferences or
Nice.
inside organizations for their employees, or groups will bring me in depending on what they're trying to achieve, or
That's fair. Because I think that have you ever spoken at like high schools? Because what you overcame, especially that transitional period when, I mean, you come in there, like some kids come in at 13, right?
Mhm.
Depending on when your
Yeah.
birthday falls in, right?
Well, and now with sports, I don't know if you followed it, but now athletes in high school can get paid. There's this whole shift that's happening, and I don't like that.
Okay.
I think it puts on pressure way too early on the kids. I can't imagine. Of course, it's a wonderful opportunity, but you're too young. Anyway, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, because you played athlete. I was fortunate enough to be a blessed 5'8", and when you start realizing the guy who's 6'2" is going to play Big Ten basketball, and you're like, yeah, time to hit the books. Like your perspective in life starts changing real quick.
Yep.
You can jump that high? Nah, I
Yep.
can't. So, but no, and again, this is why I like to hear different perspectives about things like that, so I can get your point of view on things like that. Because I thought it was important that if you're dealing with, and again, boys and gentlemen suffer eating disorders and other mental health things as well too.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to imagine that it's probably been a very stunning revelation when you realize the type of stories that you hear from people now that there is more avenues for people to actually reach out. Whereas generationally, you were a little bit of generation before it was okay to start doing things like that.
Yes. But here's the difference. And I know you have a son. Do you have
3 daughters? 3 daughters, actually.
And you have daughters. Okay.
Yeah.
So this will be important for you.
Yeah.
I think that it has changed because when we were young, we didn't have social media. Our influences were the people in our lives who were criticizing us or telling us we had to do anything. But now they're getting online and seeing women who are trying to lose weight or, look a certain way and all of this stuff. Men too, right? And so it is I think it's probably more prevalent now. We're having a lot of a rise in all of this stuff. And unfortunately, it becomes something that people strive for too, because it's this, right? And the actual recovery rate for an eating disorder is very low. So it's scary for sure.
I'll tell you, it's funny because you said the nail on the head. Like if people actually would research past what they saw, like most of these influencers, not all, I'm not going to put everybody under the bus, but if you actually start researching it, a lot of them actually are on steroids, right?
Yep.
Right? And it's steroid. And, if you've worked out worth the salt of any in your life, you can say there's no way you got that natural. There's just no, it's not happening. The way the veins are popping out, you're just like,
No.
you're taking diuretics. I know you are. There's no way.
And there's filters too. Like, don't even, I mean, not even that. It's like you can make yourself look 20 years younger.
Absolutely, you can. 100%, 150%. You know, so is do you have to be certified in the things that you're doing for people? Like, is there any like
Yes.
state certifications, things like that?
Yes. I have a mental health background. I have additional certifications, the Enneagram being one, a coaching certification. Yes, but unfortunately, that's a whole other problem where people are trying to provide services and they have zero background.
Well, everybody's an expert on YouTube.
I know. Yeah.
So, and that's why, your background. So that's why I was so curious. And I have to ask that just because every state's different, right? Every situation, you can be an assistant or you can be a coach, but you're not X, Y, and Z because you don't have X, Y, and Z certification, which is fine, in a lot of cases, right? But you just have to be able to have the right. I was just curious about your own specific qualifications.
Yeah, so, I wouldn't do it if I wasn't qualified, but I'm a different person than some other people.
Thank you for that. So I saw that you would say that you make sure that you create boundaries, safe boundaries. So what did you learn for people in addition to their career as well as their mental health about people creating those safe boundaries and putting those in place?
Yeah, I think, there's a certain type of person who, when they're trying to achieve or get to another level, they will sacrifice themselves to do so, right? They want to please, they want to get affirmation, they want to be accepted, all of these things. And so a huge thing that I work with a lot of my clients on are not just setting boundaries, but learning to say no. Because one of the huge, the big things that burns people out, that causes a lot of stress, is that constantly making yourself available. And again, this goes back to technology. We're now in this age where people can reach us at all hours and through many different mediums, and think we're expected to respond immediately.
No question.
You don't have to.
No, so well, and not to cut you off, but I did.
No, you're good.
Is that if you don't reply to that email right away, if you expect the email, we're guilty of it ourselves, right? Like, I sent you an email 10 minutes ago, you don't reply back, right? And people are like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, I do live. I don't just like stare at this continuously.
Yeah. We're conditioned now at this point culturally, right? That, people should respond or we should respond, and we don't have to. We get to teach people how to treat us, and we get to set those boundaries, right? And if it means you add something to your email that says, hey, I only check my email at, 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. If you need to reach me and it's an emergency, call me. Otherwise, I'll get to you within 24 hours or whatever. We can set those.
Well, it's funny you say that, right? So I tell my daughters all the time about the quote unquote the good old days of like, you do realize like you going on Netflix and being able to get like Moana 2 like 3 months after it was in the theater. Like, I had to wait a year for it, right? Like, so like, and the other funny part about it is too is like, you order a pizza through an app, hypothetically, you go on the website, whatever. The process of making that pizza didn't get any quicker. Your access to make the order did. So now people are expecting that if I ordered my pizza on this app, even though I have the time, even though I have the email confirmation, they're driving up to the place, ready, and the person behind the counter is like, yeah, it's sitting in the queue. We haven't even touched it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like people have been conditioned that think that because they got that confirmation that that is automatically processed.
And I think that has impacted us also in the way that we want immediate results for ourselves.
Absolutely.
So if I can order something and get it within an hour, why can't I have, these changes within myself,
Well, I was gonna tie that back into exactly what you're talking about. Just because you took that self-assessment and you got it back to Kelly, you haven't even had your first session yet to even actually implement the changes in place. You just printed it out, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I hit send. This is all of a sudden I have magic happening.
Yeah.
You have to imagine that you have to coach people through that, right?
Yeah. And, anything worth achieving or getting, it takes time. And my work is all about like what's sustainable. And if we rush things, that's not sustainable, right? It's also not effective.
For sure. So what's the typical time frame for somebody to see some tangible improvements in the processes that you laid out? And then the other question I have is, how did you come to those 4 stages of what somebody needed to go through to like, where did that come from and how long does it take for somebody?
So to have any sort of aha first session.
Okay.
Yeah. To start to implement meaningful work, 3 months, you start to really kind of experience some changes and some shifts. The length of time I work with people is really dependent on what their goals are and what they're trying to work through and where they're starting on that continuum, right? Yeah. If somebody comes and they're just entering the rigid stage, that's going to take a lot longer than somebody who's already in that adaptive place. I created that really based on the 10 plus years I've been in business and the information I've received just in kind of working with people and my own life. Like when I was pregnant with that first son, I was in autopilot. Like everything looked great on the outside, but I was a hot mess, completely unaware of what was happening, lying to myself about everything. So for myself, I've kind of really been able to identify those things too.
So I got to ask this next question. It's like asking the barber who cuts their hair. Who helps Kelly Travis when she needs to have like a reset or her stages? Like, are you quote unquote eating your own food, so to speak, right? Or do you sit back and say, and do people work for you? Do you have where do you go, and do you have anybody who helps you with your clients?
Yeah, I have a therapist.
Okay.
Because I believe in therapy. Obviously, my background is in mental health, and I'm learning every day about myself because I'm constantly paying attention and trying to figure out how I can evolve and change and grow, especially as somebody who has kids. You know this, like we're constantly going, oh, well, that didn't work. What's going on with me? What's showing up for me right now? That something's not going on, right? Or something.
The key as a parent too is like, honestly, like when you just have to say, you know what, I was completely wrong and you were absolutely correct about it. And that, I don't think the average person realizes how hard that is, because like you're the adult, like you're supposed to have the answers. And then when you have to be like, you know what, for all intents and purposes, you 11-year-old, you were absolutely correct.
Yep. I'm constantly apologizing to my kids. Yeah. So that, and just working with my clients every day, I would be, what's the word? If I was telling people what to do, but I wasn't doing it myself, whatever that, I'm trying to blank right now. I'm having a moment.
No, I get where you're going to though. I get where you have a therapist yourself because you were looking for self-improvement. You have to practice what you preach, so to speak.
Thank you. Practice what I preach.
Yeah, that's all good. Yeah. So I had a list because this is so fascinating, right? Because like I'm just like, you have a therapist, like, and you've helped organizations. What's the next step of what you want to do to take your ability and skill set to the next level? Who do you want to reach? What happens?
I love working with teams and helping them with dynamics because we're bringing ourselves to a team. Right. So like if we're not in the right place and everybody else isn't in the right place and they're not aware, there's just a lot of problems, right? But it's not something that companies generally touch on because we have goals, we have to hit numbers, we have to right? Coming into a team, helping them understand who's on the team, communication styles, interaction styles, what differences you bring and how valuable that is. All of that is so fascinating to me and I love it. On a professional level, I'm working on my master's degree because I want to have a more in-depth background in mental health. So I'm getting my counseling degree and I will still use it inside companies and with my clients. But it's just more information, right? Which makes me better.
Do you see a generational difference between who can be more open or a gender difference between who can be more open to services that you provide? What's the divide you see?
Yeah, I would say people about our age and younger are open and willing to do the work. They're less skeptical. They're, and then as you get like people who probably are a bit older than us, it's really those baby boomers that are really not, they're just like, this is who I am, right?
And to circle back from the beginning, it's a generational thing, right? So there's, it was, the neighbors aren't supposed to know your business kind of environment. You're supposed to keep everything in house. Nothing is supposed to leave these four walls kind of a situation. Yep. Why do you need to see a doctor outside of getting a shot or a procedure done? Right. Yep. So, I can see where the you have to kind of drag somebody along from a certain age bracket if they're willing to utilize your services, because it's got to be an ultimate challenge. I always ask everybody this, like, where can people find you?
Oh, yeah. Well, my website is kellytravis.net.
Yeah. Okay.
Information, how to work with me, all of that stuff is there. I just started a new podcast like a month and a half ago. I had a podcast for 4 years, ended it. Now I have this new one. It's called Ready When You Are.
Okay.
And
Nice
we really
name.
touch on this stuff, and the takeaways are really specific to where you're at on that continuum that we just talked about.
For sure.
And then on social media, I really just spend time on Instagram, and that's with Kelly Travis.
Right. I think that the work that you do is great. And I think that, I always like when they say that they help people in this regard, they have, either certifications or they're board certified or they have something. And a piece of paper is obviously subjective depending on the field that you're in. Yep. But, knowing that you have met certain criterias, that to be able to do what you do lends credibility towards the things that you're accomplishing for people. So
yeah. Thank you.
That goes a long way. That's nice to hear. And I'm glad you've overcome the challenges in your life and you're working through it every day. Did you have questions for me?
No. I'm excited that you're putting this out there, and I can't wait to hear the other interviews you've done.
Yeah, I wasn't smart enough to do anything else. So the one thing I thought was like, I could do a podcast. I think that by being curious, you almost put yourself back into that kid mode a little bit again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the beauty about children is that they don't care if they trip. They don't care if they slip and fall. They don't care if some of them laugh, but like they have such a mindset of curiosity that is envious when you get to be an adult, because then asking a lot of questions and being curious almost gets kind of frowned upon, or it's a little too weird for some people.
Mm-hmm.
So I created this podcast because you should always be reading. You should always watch a documentary, and you should always look for deeper things that are more interesting than the world that's just staring you in the face.
Yes, I love that. And you're really great at interviewing. So,
the one thing I really appreciate that, because, people's time is valuable, and I want to make sure that they feel welcome here. And that's what this show is all about, the randomness of nothing. And I really appreciate some kind words. Kelly Travis, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any other questions, I only ask that people subscribe and tune in when this podcast begins its journey into the randomness of nothing. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.